Hello, hello. Howdy. Happy Wednesday. I'm Potch, and today we're going to be playing with Svelte.js. In fact, this is the second stream on Svelte.js. Svelte Part 2. Folks, last time we did Svelte, were really stoked about it, and they wanted to see more, and I wanted to explore more. We're going to start off with a basic, adding a basic node server to this Svelte.js template project and making a secondary starter that lets you both serve your compiled Svelte project as well as have a basic node server that can handle routes and fetching API data and all that good stuff. So, without any further ado, let us get started. Like I said, if you didn't see last week's stream, I built this project. We're gonna just pop that open real quick. I'll give you the tour. And it's a Svelte app template. If you're not familiar with Svelte.js, let's pop them open. They build themselves as cybernetically enhanced web apps. And their big pitch is that you can write code that feels really nice and a lot like building in your Vue or your React, where you can write these nice single file components. You can use JSX. But as opposed to potentially having a really big bundle afterward, a lot of the Svelte code disappears away and you're really left with a much more streamlined vanilla JS looking resulting file that works pretty well. And it means that your file sizes are going to be a little bit less big ultimately. And hopefully that is good for your project so you can get more done with fewer bytes of code. So I decided to explore this and last stream made this Svelte app template. And the way this works is we've got our basic main page here, really basic. And then classic pull in a bundle. And then the main meat of our app actually lives here over in this app.svelte file and this main.js. So we pull in app and instantiate it. It instantiates just like you would be doing a new class. And in here, you can see this doesn't look anything like a normal JS file. It's a .svelte single file component where you can sort of do the code, the template, and styles, which are auto-scoped for you. It's pretty slick. So we're actually going to evolve this Svelte template starter into a Svelte maybe server starter, we'll call it. I'm not 100% sure what I'll name the thing at the end. So let's get started. Right now, take a look at package.json. You can see that this is truly a client-side app. There is no server really running there. I mean, there is a server. It serves CLI. It's just serving static files. So for us to actually have an actual server, we are going to have to code one. So I'm thinking we're going to start by saying server, making a new file called server index.js. For this server, I'm going to use Express because I like Express. I think it's a quick way to get something like this off the ground. So we're going to say Express equals. Gotta get my typing fingers on in this heat. Maybe I should get me some air conditioning. That's not going to work. And also, we're not running it. So we have this file called server index, but you can see in our package.json, I have the logs here open, that we're not calling that. So what we're actually going to do is on start. Right now we've got npm run all build serve, and serve is this. We're going to switch that to being node server.js. Oh, actually node server index.js. It's going to think for a second, and then it's definitely going to complain because after it's built, it's going to be very sad. And there it was. It was sad because I didn't install Express. So let's do that. Hit this add package button in glitch and bolt in an Express server. Okay, so we've added Express, which now means when it didn't actually install. I thought this is a great bug. I discovered this bug the other day in glitch. We're actually working on fixing it, but you can see right here that this project only has dev dependencies. And so when I went to add Express, it didn't do anything because it didn't see the dependencies key. And that meant that it didn't know what to do, and it didn't install anything because it didn't know where to add dependencies. I think that's a little bit of a bug. We should create a dependencies key if for whatever reason we are find ourselves without one and someone installs something. Now you can see Express has been inserted into that spot. Cool. So we've got Express. Now see that our logs are going to not do anything because I'm not listening yet. Gonna go get some Express.js copy pasta, because... What about adding dev dependencies in Glitch, Rascals? That's a very, very good question. Right now, the solution is that you just move them over. I would love to have a sort of add as dev kind of thing. It's sort of a moot point for a Glitch project because it's both dev and production, but for people who are going to potentially be using this as part of a larger project workflow, I think we should be able to make it possible to add dev dependencies as well as production dependencies for when you're running those in separate environments. But right now on Glitch, dev and production are the same thing. So we kind of put everything in dependencies. Hopefully we can adjust that. Hello world. We're just going to quick jump to the fastest possible. Okay. The app.listen, and yeah, we're going to just grab all this stuff, because why not? Copy pasta is good for everyone. Go back to our index. I think that's reasonable. We're actually probably going to call this... I believe it's a send file. Of course, I could just copy paste this from another Glitch project, but let's just keep pushing forward here. Get these font size bumped up here. I'm jumping into the Express stuff just because sometimes I forget off the top of my head how to do things, and I need to pop them along. So res send file, we can say it's going to be I'd have to know this process.env.home plus, and I misspelled there, my mistake. And then port is not going to be 3000, it's going to be port, because we can specify a different thing. Cool. So after everything's running, you can see we now have example app listening on port 3000. I'm going to open this next to the code temporarily, just so you can see if it's working. Right now, let's see. I see nothing, which is not what I would like to see. Let's move this into its own bona fide function. We're gonna quickly just jump to a copy paste situation if we find ourselves stuck for much longer, because we have lots to cover today. Process env home. Oh, right. Is that gonna work? That should work, but let's see. Just gonna quick log what this is, so make sure I'm not tripping over myself here. Aha, we have an error. I love it. And that's because that. So already I'm seeing a little bit of this chunkiness here where we're rebuilding the app every time I change the server. I don't like that. Let's fix it. Let's fix it right now. We're going to go to our package.json. And right now we have our npm run all, but we're doing build and serve in serial. So it's always building and then serving. I think what we should do is actually run them in parallel, which is shortened to just run p if you're using the npm run all tool, which we are. And that's going to start up my builder and my server at the same time. So now you'll notice that if I believe this should not be nearly as heavy when I start up. It should restart very quickly. Let's go to index.js. I can see that that is in fact the file we want to send, but it is for some reason having no content, and I know why. There's no content in that page. So we need I believe it's going to be let's see if now we get more performance here. You can see that I'm just struggling today, and that is okay. So I'm going to pull the ripcord and make an Express project and just copy paste the code out of it from Glitch, because there's a lot of voice boilerplate there. Start Express. We're going to quick warp into this project. I also just realized that I have been editing the Svelte template starter. Remember, kids, remix your projects when you're going to want to leave the original ones alone. We're going to remix that as well, and then rewind the original. We're having a good time today. The net result is this. Ta-da! think the biggest issue here is that it doesn't understand how to route this, so we're just going to do the same instruction here, and that should fix that. Aha! And now our Svelte project is serving. Okay, back in business. On time, under budget. So now we're currently looking at a project called Spring Bugle 1. I'm going to share that with all y'all now that it's actually working. That's going to be the project page. So I'm going to copy out the project page and drop that in chat for you. You're welcome to click that link. You can take a look, click around, see all the code that's going on. I'm going to mark that project here. And probably at the end of the stream, we're going to rename that to a more descriptive thing. But we'll keep working on it in this state. Before I forget, we are going to go fix the Svelte template starter. I did not mean to mess that up. Fortunately, I can show off the rewind feature. So I went into this project, made a bunch of changes, didn't mean to make them, meant to remix first. So down here, at the bottom of my screen, I don't know if you can see, I'm gonna quick do a zoom. We've got this icon that looks like a rewind button. That's because it is for the feature called rewind. So I can click that button, and you're gonna see a little previewing rewind come up, and we're gonna get this nice interface right here. You can see that 12 days ago I made this app, and 3 minutes ago I started making some changes and messed those up. So I can drag this slider back, and you're going to see these dependencies is removed. You can see the diff. I want to put this back. This all looks correct. We're going to remove server index. Perfect. You can rewind this project and get it back to the way it started. Cool. So if you're making a mistake like that, do not fear. There is Git underneath the hood, and we expose it to you both via the console and the handy rewind feature. You see a warning here. I want to make sure everything is okay. Yeah, it just had a moment. Great. Leaving Svelte template JS alone. Let's go back into our server. So we have this really basic Express server added on here. And I want to do a couple other things. First of all, right now, this is nice that we're running build and serve in parallel. I like that a lot. That means that if I go over here and edit app.svelte and let's do the dumb fix here and say hello, comma world, it should not restart my server. Right now it did. We don't like that. What that means is that if we take a look at watch.json, right now it's including for restart Svelte files. We don't want that. In fact, anything in source we want to be left alone and not cause a restart. So what we're going to do is we're going to say up here, we're just going to clone this directory listing and say ignore source, and then we can do that. And so this is going to catch server, but it's not going to catch anything in source. I do have a bug, which I'm missing a comma, and this all looks good. Cool. Server is restarting, and you can see the example apps listing on port 3000, and the bundle ran. But if I change this, and we're going to remove the comma, what we should see is that it rebuilds, but the server doesn't restart. Here's my hope. It did not. So let's go see why that's happening. We have live reload. Production. What's this production? Roll up watch. So what's it doing? Because we're in dev. If it's not in production, we have a live reload. I am not going to use the live reload, so we're going to leave that alone. We're going to remove the live reload, and let's not minify right now in this version at all. So we're just gonna. Oh, this is the same. Refresh the browser on changes when not. Maybe I do want the live reload, but I don't want it to hinge on whether or not we're using the watcher. I just want it to happen all the time. And I'll strip out I'll comment out minification for the time being. Exclude server, not source. Oh, so right now the watch.json file is excluding is what triggers the server restart. So I want to exclude source. If I exclude server, my server doesn't restart when my server. Ooh, we have a nice error bug here. Live reload is not defined, right? Because I deleted it. Heck, we'll just pull that too. And we are going to say true. Because this is an example. I don't want this stuff hinging on production. Okay, unused external imports. Cursor imported but never used. I agree. Let's make this even simpler. That's restarting the server, but now if I go over here, oh, one last thing I need to check. I need to check my build here. Roll up C, but it's not watching. That's why. We're gonna actually have it do auto build and not just build. And now that once it's done thinking, so the server is going to restart. Example app was listening on port 3000, bundles made. I go here and add a comma. Bundle rebuilt, but server did not restart. Fantastic. That's the effect I wanted. I may want to bring that live reload back at some point, but right now I'm just satisfied with the fact that when I remove or do something, it rebuilds without causing my server to reboot. That's going to make development way, way faster going from this point forward, because we can sort of do these things in parallel. We don't have to worry about either, really. So we have this unbelievably simple application here that does have a server and is being served by the server, but is actually not taking advantage of the fact that it's a server. I more or less replicated the serve CLI thing, which we're going to strip out. So how do we do better? How do we take advantage of the fact that we are now controlling the server? For me, the thing I want to do is go get some data from somewhere. And so getting data from somewhere will let me bring that into the client and take advantage of all the cool stuff that Svelte has. Let's actually take a look at the Glitch API. Glitch API is not fully launched yet, but there are some really simple things I can do without it existing fully. So I can say, hey, look, it's me. Let's take a look at what we get from taking a look at users by logins. What I'd love to see is if I can get a list of my own projects. So we get one user, which is me, and I have a whole mess of projects. I think this is really cool just to visualize my own user profile. So we're going to take advantage of this little JSON API, and we're going to use it to visualize the projects that I've built. So we have our app, and what I want to do is fetch data within this app and then render it. I think to do that, if we first need to be able to make it so we can fetch the data. So we're going to add a new route to our server, and it's going to call that user. And actually, let's do that. And that way we can fetch other people that aren't just me. If you remix this project, you could make it you could get your own projects. I think that might be nice. Res. And we are going to get that data. And that data will come from this URL. So, how are we going to get that data? We're going to use, in the client, we would use fetch. And in the server, we can also use fetch. One of my favorite node libraries is called node fetch. And I can grab node fetch and install that into our project. And what that will let me do is, just like you would on the client, use fetch on the server. It's effectively a node polyfill for the fetch API. I love it. I highly recommend it anytime you need to go get some data. Because eventually it means if you ever want to share that data fetching code between your client and your server, you're using the exact same API. Cool. So, as opposed to making this a comment, make it a call. So we're going to say, first of all, I'm going to make this nice and make this an async. And then do let data equals await fetch. And then over here where it says logins, I can substitute in rec, which is the express object for requests. So you can see right here, this rec refers to this. Params, which lets me unpack things from these tokens. Since I can say username. We're going to say .then, because after we have the data, we want to take advantage of it and get it, parse it as JSON. And that's a built-in thing with fetch, so I can just say that. So this line is kind of long, But what it lets me do, and actually it's so long that we're going to split it into two commands. I just think that's going to be easier to read for everyone. So we're going to take this and strike it from here and replace that with just a method variable URL. Say let URL equals, great. It's a little bit easier to read, just having those things be 2 lines. We have our data. Once we have our data, we can send it to the client by saying res.json. That is an extra method on Express that lets us take a JavaScript object and flush it down as JSON to the client. So we can say. Right now, I am parsing the data and then immediately reserializing it. It's a little inefficient, but it lets me verify that what I'm getting back from the server is JSON data, or else that will fail. Another thing I could do is, assuming this might fail, as I said, we could say try instead of just doing it because we're using await. I could say try this, catch E, and we could say here we attempt to fetch the data, and if we fail, we can say res.json error fetching data. So now we have a really simple API proxy that lets us talk to the server. We could process this data. We can do all kinds of stuff, right? On the server. Right now, we're just passing it through, but I wanted to show how you could add a basic API to your client. So now we have that API. How are we going to get the API? We could do that right in here in our app.svelte. I like the idea of letting these just be components and not worrying about data. So I'm going to create a new file called user service.js. And that's going to be a JS module that is going to have right now just one method: export function get user name. And that's just going to, actually it's going to be a async function, just like on the server. And we could say, let's make it really basic, and just say return fetch. What did I say? What I call my route? My route is user. So user name. I'm gonna wait that eventually. Then r.json. Cool. So we're fetching. This is right now. I understand that I'm not doing anything in this function, and it's a little silly to make this file, and it may even be a little bit of a premature abstraction, but I love the idea of this having the ability to have more logic in here. Processing, parsing down, stripping keys, stringing over into the filtering, whatever. I like that can all happen in this service. Because it means on our app, we can now say, above this, we're going to say import, I say get or fetch? Get user. User from and right now we are going to say we're going to keep name. We're actually going to use name as our setup. So we'll make an update function, and that update function is going to also be async. And we're going to have let user data, a user data object. And what we're doing right now is we are creating a place for the fetch data to go. So update is going to simply say user data equals await update. This get user. And we're going to pass name. I like the idea of that being taking advantage of that prop. Right now we're fetching it for something called world. That's not a good idea. We're going to go back to our main And right now, I'll change this to be Potch. That is my username. So, if this is happening, we don't know. Let's and then let's open up our logs and take a look. Let's see if we can. I think right now we can minimize these server logs. But I do want to open up my client logs and bump up the font size for y'all using the Firefox DevTools here. So I can say, hey, target this frame, and it's going to be just telling me the logs from over here. So if I reload, nothing happens, and that's because I didn't call update. When the component is instantiated, we can call update. And now if I refresh, network error attempting to fetch resource. That's progress. Cool. So what this is telling me is that get user being called. Let's take a look at user service. Let's add a log. I love logs. Getting data for user. Getting data for user, and then fail. Let's try putting a slash here. I think I may have put that in the peculiar. Take a look at our server. I'm going to show you a really cool server trick. Yeah, Raskus, I love being able to look at the console from a server frame. Raskus said he didn't know you could look at the console from a specific frame. It's very useful. I'm going to add another one of my most favorite useful little. I call this like console.log debugging for Express. But you can I make these little helpers, and it's this helper that just says rec res next. And this is going to app.use tells Express send every request through here. I'm making a tiny middleware. And this middleware is going to have rec.method. And we're just going to log the rec.method and rec.url. And then we're going to call next, which just says, I actually don't care about this request. Let someone else ultimately handle it. I just wanted to act as middleware. What you're going to see now, I don't know if you saw that, but down here in my server logs, we had this whole mess where all of a sudden you see all these requests and we can see everything that's going through our project. I like that a lot. So these two little lines of code just make it so you can see all the requests coming into your server to see if you're handling them correctly. So we've got app.get user username. And then if we wanted, we could even say console.log getting data for and let's see if that incoming request, it is that. So what do we have? We're going to see a bunch of stuff here. Getting data for Potch. So absolutely got the data. The question then is, did it parse it properly? Let's log it temporarily. Interesting. We have an error. Let's take a look what the error is. See, it says getting data for me, and then it doesn't, neither of these are happening. Oh, there they go. Big request. Oh, and look, it made it to the client. Okay, we're actually in good shape. I thought we were in worse shape than we were. It's just this request is slow, which is okay. Maybe our server can do a little bit of caching for us, so if it's requested it recently, it doesn't request it again. In fact, let's do that. Let's do a let user cache equals, and we can say, this is why you have a server, to be able to do smart things like this. So we're going to say get user. And we can say if username in user cache. Ooh, this will be super fun. Make this an async function. And we can just return otherwise, we construct this URL. We make the fetch. just like before. And then we store it if it's into cache. Data. Return data. And then here we can now say and then update this reference here to just use the username variable. So now what's happening is we just wrote a little caching function. Another amazing thing about using async and await. Yes, if you refresh the app, if you remix the app, you are not seeing my server. But if you're loading it from the URL that I pasted in channel, you're seeing the exact same server I'm working on. Okay, so I capitalize username here, which is a problem. Otherwise, this all looks good. This is cool. So we've now written actually a really, really basic caching server. So as long as the server never restarts, we're not hitting the API. We're hanging on to that data ourselves, and that means that we're going to put less load on the API server, which is going to make the API server very happy. We could put a timeout on this cache. We could say maybe cache it for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, who knows. Right now, as long as the server's awake, we're going to hang on to the data after it's been fetched once. We have now our really, really basic data server. I'm happy with this. It's got caching. It's got everything a growing server needs. And we're going to go back into our project. You can see we're actually able to console.log the data. I don't know if you can see that down here. But there's an object. Inside of it is an array and an array. That's very interesting. I wonder what that is. Right? It's an array with one thing in it. Oh, then the first thing in it is the user. So we want to get the first user from our data. And what we're going to do is actually just, maybe that's a good thing to do in the user service. Actually, that's a good thing to do on the server. I don't care about the multiple users. So we can say, this is a little messy, but we're here to code live. We're just getting the first item. Actually what I want to do is go look through all my projects. That's what I want to do. So we've got projects. I'm going to make a little card for every project with the remaining time I have in this hour. So we're going to say and then here we're going to say project, and we're going to pass various things into it. Right now we're just going to do that. This is a really short way of telling Svelte, take an object called project and just expand everything onto it. And what we do, we wrap this in an each block. Each user data.projects. And we're going to use as the key project.id. We can close that. And now we have a loop. This is going to explode, of course, because project doesn't exist. So let's make a project component. Always remember this. These are default exports when you use Svelte. So it's going to be project from. My goodness, can't type today. Or any day, if I'm being honest. So, okay, we've got await you get username, data. Okay, don't need to console.log this anymore because we know what we're doing. Now a project needs to exist. Let's make our project component. I'm going to temporarily just clone all of this because it's just faster. Starting from scratch. I don't need this. I don't need this. What I am going to need is the ability to unpack a bunch of properties from my project object. So we want domain, description, What else do we want? Start with the main description. That means our object will have those, at least those two properties. Don't need this style, and our project object is going to be a list item. We'll call it, go to class of, and we'll say project is not defined in bundle.js. Import project from project.svelte. Take a look at my server logs, see if it compiled properly. That's very interesting. Because I am most definitely importing it right here. Take a look at those Svelte docs, make sure I'm doing it right. Never a bad thing to look at the docs. Particularly when you're on stream. And trying to actually get some stuff done. So, nested components, make sure this looks right. Import nested from /nested.svelte. That looks extremely reasonable. Import project from /project.svelte. But sure enough, just to be on the safe side, we're going to restart our server. There's a chance that it can't see the file. It's going to make a random change, trigger a restart. And that's a little kludgy. That shouldn't happen. That's a problem with this project if it does. But I just want to see if that fixes the bug. It did. It did fix the bug. And we'll say we need to initialize this now to nothing. I see. Okay. So now what we probably want to do is say projects, and then we can unpack that here. Then we can not mess around with this clumsy user data object. Only use the property we need. Assignment to undeclared variable user data. I don't know you, but I don't see that. What line does it say that? 601? 9. Nope, you're wrong. Are you just getting out of sync with me? Is that what's going on? Can I get source maps from Svelte? I actually am. I don't know if you can see this. I believe I am getting source maps because the bundle is then giving me these internal objects, and then actually this secondary error is actually taking me right to the right thing. I'll pull up the debugger and see if I'm actually getting proper source maps. It's a good idea. Is the refresh running? It certainly should be, and I'm refreshing this, but maybe we've got an error, and because I have those logs closed, we can't see it. I guess maybe I can't do it this way. Maybe this sort of assignment is just not permitted. I got over clever with my assignment. Okay. I don't know if you can see this, by the way, Raskus, but down here, these files being broken out means I am, in fact, getting a source map. So if I scroll all the way to the bottom of this, you'll see down here, source mapping URL equals bundle.js.map. So it is serving a source map, and that is giving me useful errors. And the reality is, it didn't compile. Is what the reality is. It didn't compile because you can't do this. Which is sort of a bummer. So let's figure out how to. We'll just make this boring then. Let user projects equals user.data. I don't love that, or I don't love this as a construction, but it will work. And then we can say projects is an empty array by default. Getting a big wad of warnings. I know why that is. What I should be saying is domain Um, there. Okay. I know. I just had a lot of stuff going all over the screen for a second, but the net result is this. Ta-da! You can now see that I have a whole mess of my projects. I go to those projects. Let's go do more with our project component. Now that we've got it, let's make this an H3. Let's make this a link, and we'll say oop, can't spell or can't type. There we go. So now we have an H3. We're asking us to ask, where did Glitch get their word list for new apps? We have a repo called Friendly Words that's we maintain, but it started off as a standard word list. I believe that is a public repo. Hope I'm not showing you some secret sauce here. Yeah, this is a public repo, and so we publish it as an npm module called Friendly Words. So if you need a word list for new apps, you can check it out. We've tried to remove things that when paired together make things a little risque for kids and things like that. But yeah, this is the Friendly Words module. You should absolutely check it out. I will potentially, do we link to it here? No, but I will throw this repo in the chat to reply to your question. So, good question. We've now got this nice pretty list of projects. Let's put the description in. Well, I like using pre for this. I don't know why. We can just say, think for a second. Cool. I think the reason I like saying pre is because pre is how we do stuff. We like using the pre-formatted text on glitch.com too. So I don't like that it's wrapping or making these really long strings. So let's add a style for it. We're gonna say white space equal or is pre-wrap, which is like a pre, but it automatically word wraps. So you can now see this nice list. We could get its creation date and time. So let's say and there we can let's pass this new value called created, and we'll extract that from the project. I'm going to wrap this to a new line just because it'll look nice as I add more and more things. So this will be cool, like so. So that's a timestamp. So right now, if I put that in my project, we're going to see this timestamp. I think we can do a little better there. I'm going to make a function called ago. I like writing this function. I probably don't need to actually write it every time I do it, but I love it. Const ago equals date and then you can give a reference time. So you say now equals date dot now, and that will give me a reference to now. We can say let age equals so yeah, let age equals now dot get time minus new oh, and we want that probably in seconds to start. Age is less than, I like 120. turn age plus I think you see where I'm going with this, but I'm just going to add a couple cases here. Between each, we do a little division. We say, actually, this will be age equals 60. If age now is less than. So now we have its age in minutes. And then we can say age in. So now we have its age in minutes. We do that divided by 60, and we say that's less than 20. Or that's less than 48. Let's say hours, and then if that's less than. You know what? Let's stop because I need to wrap this segment with saying wrap it and end it with days. I know that's going to get a little messy as these projects get really, really old. What it lets me do is it lets me say assuming I can do my code right. I coded that right. Now.getTime is not a function. Oh, date.now is already a timestamp. Great. Good job, me. Oh, and I did not divide this by 1,000 like I said I would. Which is making everything very old. Okay, so what do we have here? We have the ability to take this project, and you can see that it's actually creating a list of all of my projects. I have a lot of projects. But the cool part about it is I have this huge list of projects, and you can see how old they are. And some of them are still thinks they are much older. Let's see, did I get this right? 120, if age is less than 120 seconds, we call it seconds. Otherwise, we divide it by 60. If it's less than 120 there, we divide it by minutes. And then otherwise, age equals floor age less than 24. There we go. That's what's missing. There. So now as I scroll through these projects, 14 days, 43 minutes, 71 days. Yeah, you can see all my projects. And right now, I guess I could do years after a certain amount of time. I didn't. Really simple function. You know, you could use a date library, but if all you need is relative times in the past, I thought that was neat. So, what do we have here? We now have a Svelte project that incorporates a server. That server is doing some non-trivial data handling for us, caching and fetching from a remote API. We made ourselves a little service. That service is a data handling service. This is a really, really thin service that just, you know, we know that we want to get, if we want information about users, we get it from the user service. In our project templates, which are these really, really simple objects, we have the main, which instantiates everything. If you wanted to remix this and make it about yourself, you totally could. And that is it. And we've reconfigured a bunch of things in here to have this nice auto reload functionality to let people really build quickly within the glitch environment and let the tooling roll up and the auto restart and helping stuff of glitch not fight. I'm pretty happy with that. I actually think that makes a really valid starter. So what I'm going to do is after this stream, we're going to package up Spring Bugle 1. I'm going to promote this as a sort of secondary or intermediate Svelte template on glitch because I think it's going to be really valuable. Obviously, it's going to have a lot more explanation because there's a lot more going on. We're going to pause here because I actually want to make this a two-part stream today.